Have you ever thought about how an object, something as simple as a stone, could actually tell a story that stretches across thousands of years? Well, that's exactly what we're going to do today. We are tracing the absolutely incredible journey of 12 precious stones, following them as they transform from these heavy, dull symbols of an ancient law into the very foundations of a city made of pure light. It's a really powerful metaphor for how an idea can go from being something external, something you carry, to something that lives inside of you.
And this quote, this is our roadmap for the whole journey. It perfectly captures that huge shift we're about to explore, a move from an external set of rules to an internal, living reality. You're going to want to keep this idea in your back pocket because every single thing we unpack today builds right on top of this theme.
All right, so where does this story kick off? Well, like a lot of great stories, it starts in the ancient desert, right in the pages of the book of Exodus. We're zeroing in on this really sacred garment worn by the high priest, this one person who represented the entire nation before God.
So this garment, the ephod, it wasn't just some fancy robe. It was incredibly intricate, just dripping with symbolism. And set right into the breastplate, kind of like a sacred pouch over the chest, were 12 very specific stones. And these were not just for decoration, no way. Each stone had the name of one of the 12 tribes of Israel engraved on it. It was this heavy physical reminder that the priest was literally carrying over his heart.
Now, what's so fascinating is what these stones were like at the start. They were described as being of the earth, opaque, not yet shining with their own light. They were heavy. They represented this covenant that was all tied up in ritual, in shadows, a law that you could touch but couldn't fully see through. The divine was there for sure, but it was still kind of veiled.
So you've got these earthly stones, and they represent a promise, but they're not the final form. Not even close. So the whole narrative pivots. There's this one single event in history that becomes the fulcrum, the turning point for the whole story. And it's an event that would take those heavy, dull stones and kickstart a radical transformation.
The cross is framed here as this ultimate refiner's fire. It's presented as the true diamond, a perfect standard of clarity and strength, and also the eternal cornerstone, a brand new foundation. The idea is that every symbol, every ritual, every single truth from that old covenant had to pass through this event to be totally tested and transformed.
And this just lays out that core shift so perfectly. Under the law, things were veiled and shadowy, but through grace, they become revealed and radiant. What was once just a ritual you had to perform becomes a living reality inside you. And here's the most important part. What was once a symbol that was carried for the people now becomes a truth that dwells within the people. Huge difference.
So what actually happens to these stones when they pass through that metaphorical fire? Well, some truths are just so foundational they don't get replaced. Instead, they get magnified. They just burst into color and light, completely illuminated by this new reality of grace.
Just take a look at this. The red sardius stone, for example, it was always a symbol of sacrifice. But now, it points directly to redemption. The incredible blue sapphire, representing divine truth, it transforms from a law carved on cold stone tablets to a law that's written on our hearts. And the glory, represented by the jasper, which used to be confined to a sacred tent, is now said to fill his people. You see what's happening? The symbol is the same, but its meaning becomes infinitely deeper and way more personal.
But other stones couldn't just get polished up. Their very nature had to be glorified into something brand new. Take the onyx stone. It was this stark black stone, and it represented judgment. But after passing through the cross, it becomes Sardonyx, this beautiful layered stone of red and white. It signifies that every name is now carried not in judgment, but in grace and redemption. What a change! And this process didn't stop there. The fiery carbuncle, representing the raw fire of sacrifice, becomes chrysolite, a golden stone that reflects pure, revealed glory. The diamond, which was once a symbol of the rigid, unbreakable law, gets replaced by the cornerstone. Not a thing, but a person, a foundation of living grace.
Okay, so this is where it all leads. This is the incredible conclusion to our story. It doesn't just end with a transformed piece of clothing. No, it ends with this absolutely breathtaking vision of a transformed reality, an eternal city that's described in the book of Revelation.
And guess what we find as the bedrock of the city? The stones. They're back. But they are not on a priest's breastplate anymore. Now there are 12 of them, and they are serving as the 12 radiant, light-filled foundations of the New Jerusalem itself. So this is the monumental shift in purpose, right here.
The symbols of God's people are no longer just a memory that's carried before God. In this final vision, the people themselves, who are represented by these foundation stones, now are the dwelling place. The veil is completely gone.
Which brings us to the final, and maybe the most important part of this whole journey. Why does any of this ancient symbolism matter to us today? What's the real-world application? Well, the metaphor takes one last, incredibly personal turn.
The big idea is that this metaphor isn't ultimately about literal jewels at all. It's about spiritual qualities. The foundation stones of that heavenly city are said to reflect the very character, the virtues that God builds into the hearts of people. The truly powerful idea here is that shift from just remembering something about God to actually embodying the character of God. So the foundation of ruby reflects a life of passion, the sapphire, deep wisdom, the emerald, constant growth. Each of these virtues is seen as a beautiful, light-filled stone, a characteristic that makes a person part of this divine, eternal structure. It's like it's saying that a life of integrity, of courage, of humility, it literally helps build a new reality.
And that is the full journey, from a law that was carried on heavy, opaque stones to a living grace that shines from within. It's a story of transformation, where people themselves become the radiant, foundational stones of a new creation, a journey from just being remembered by God to being chosen as His very dwelling place. So the question is, what stone are you building with today?